Now, so let me begin by saying hello, everyone, and welcome to Ibi Speaks. My name is Ibi and today we will be talking about spotting red flags early in your relationship. And this conversation is part of my February series on love and relationships, aimed at helping you approach your relationship more meaningfully and mindfully. I started off the series with the topic Finding Love After Loss, and it was followed by Find Love and Connectivity, where my guests were very candid and open and were very honest. And I think that if you missed any of those conversations, I think you can check them out on my YouTube channel, Ibi. And so for this episode, I have a panel of guests. And the idea behind this conversation is that it is not only that you'll be able to detect red flags, but also that you would be able to make informed decisions and then be able to handle these red flags proactively. Now, I have 4 guests, versatile with different experiences, and their experiences are wide-reaching. And I really love this combination because they would give us a wide perspective of the subject matter of red flags. My first guest is Dr. Amoni Jasper. She's based in the United Kingdom. She's a general practitioner and a wellness coach with an edge. And my second guest is Ibi Omobua. She's the mother of 3 beautiful children and a human resource specialist. She's based in Nigeria. And my third guest is Mr. Henry Wite. He's a corporate and a transactional lawyer. He's based in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. And my final guest is Tante Ikiriko. She is a family services professional, a pranic healer, among many other things. And she's based in the United States of America. And I want to thank all of my guests and everyone who is here, my viewers. I want to say thank you so much. I appreciate that you're here. And so yes, and you can follow me on my social media handles, Ibinabo Enebi on Instagram, Ibinabo Enebi on Facebook. And I have a website, onewomanity.com. You can check out some of our latest articles there. So without taking much of our time, I just want to throw in this question, and it's for anybody, it's for any one of you to answer. What would we consider to be red flags in a relationship?
So red flags, I would say red flags are the signs, things that point you to bigger and better things.
Wow.
A lot of times a red flag, if we don't know what is a red flag and what to watch out for, it could be one of those things where we could say, oh, it's the person's personality, or maybe they're having a hard time or a hard day, things they do. It's the little things that we often don't pay attention to. Now, as human beings, we do have our different times in life, our biological issues, time we wake up, we have breakfast, illnesses, and all kinds of things that could kind of affect things that we do. But then a red flag, you have to be very, very aware of certain things that could lead to other things. One person's red flag might not be a red flag to somebody else. So I tie in red flags to my personal boundaries, okay? And I think that knowing your boundaries is something over time. It's like if something happens to you, say, oh, I didn't really like the way that felt. This is going to be my boundary. And anything that looks like it's going to interfere with that could be a red flag to you as an individual. But there's some red flags that are common across the board. And in researching, that's why the internet has been such a valuable tool in these years, because when I was growing up, you could only go to the library or buy a book. You see a book. Oh, I remember my father bought me a book about 10 stupid things women do to mess up their lives. So that was the closest thing I could come to understanding relationships and things that are really not really not helpful to what it is you want in a future companion or partner. As time went on, the internet came on, or you could be confronted with a situation and just Google it or go to YouTube, and boom, the answer would be right there. So I just look at red flags as signs into worse scenarios, being a little bit more futuristic by paying attention to things that are happening in the present.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Tante, you've just hit the ground running. And you've said something that is, very, very interesting. And does anyone else have anything to say about red flags?
No, I think she hit it majorly, but I just I classified mine as danger signs, and I keep telling myself that I saw a lot of them, but just as she said, I pushed them aside. They didn't seem like red flags to me. They seemed like things that you could manage. But just as she said, it gets worse. And so it's now that, or should I say, now I can actually sit down and say, oh, okay, that was a red flag. Oh, that was a red flag. But I just based it as, maybe it's just the character or just the way he is, But now that I think of it, and especially with my 3 daughters, I'm going to spell it out. Spell it out, because now I can sit down and I can pinpoint what a red flag is. But then I couldn't. Just as she said, I based it as, character. But now that I think about it, I think I would have done it a bit differently.
So, Henry, do you have anything to add? Hello.
Okay, hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, I quite agree with them. I'll just try and narrow down to a definition. Pointers and indications that things could deteriorate or be less than desirable. Basically, that's it.
Wow. And Dr. Jasper?
What's your take
about what red flags?
I think everybody has pretty much said what it is. For me, red flag is no go, stop, exactly like the traffic light system. The character traits or attributes that are not negotiable. There's no way to look at it or consider it or decide or discuss it. No is no, stop. Second to red flags, you'd probably be looking at yellow flags, which are, okay, maybe there's a bad day going on and that's why somebody has behaved in the way they have. But for me, red flags are completely not negotiable.
Perfect. Now, Ibi, I want to bring this conversation back to you because you said that in retrospect or looking back now, certain things would have been red flags, but at the time that you didn't know that they were red flags. And so what were they?
Okay, first of all, I had somebody that was very argumentative, very argumentative. And something that I didn't pick is like when you have an argument and you sort of win the argument, then it's a problem. So you can't win a conversation with that person, If he doesn't have his way, then it's either his way or the highway. And I just felt that it was somebody that was strong-willed. I just didn't pick it then. It was just like, he's a Capricorn, I'm a Capricorn. 2 of us are strong-headed. It doesn't really make any difference. But now that I think about it, of course, one person, well, you can't always win every conversation, really. You can't win every argument, But then it was just like, he's just strong-headed, take it like that. But now that I think of it, oh no, I don't think I would have thought about it twice. And then you have somebody that is hot-tempered, somebody that you get angry and then you start throwing things. I just felt it was a tantrum, just the same way, one of my children would throw a tantrum. But now that I think about it, and maybe after everything I went through after that, that's not a tantrum. When somebody starts throwing things aimed at you, then it's no longer a tantrum. But I didn't pick it then. I just felt it's one of those things, But now that I think of it, obviously my children are going to have an earful when I need to give them advice, especially because I have 3 daughters. So I'm going to break it down to them one after the other, you know. So it was just different issues. There was even part of it was, then I used to think he just didn't want me to work too hard. But it was later that I realized that he was somebody that just didn't want, he wanted somebody that was more of a doormat. He didn't want an achiever, you know. So when we were both working in the bank, and the department I was in, you know, is more outward because I was in procurement. So I was meeting with a lot of people, MDs and all that of other companies that we were buying things from, while he was, you know, just like a banking officer. And then when you go out then, and I have people saying, oh, Madam Ije, that's you. And then I already know that they're going to be hit all the way home. You know, but I didn't pick it then. I just thought it was jealousy. But now that I think about it, I just figured that he just didn't want an achiever. He just wanted a doormat, more like it, you know. So there were so many things I should have noticed then, and I waved them aside, and it still came back to bite me at some point. So,
Yeah, Dr. Monia, do you have anything to say about that?
I'm smiling because everything that Ivi has said. Ivi, I'm so glad you're here and you're well. But you said a lot of I didn't pick it. I didn't realize I. And, you know, when I was thinking about the subject, it was like, who recognizing red flags early? Who recognizes these red flags? I do. Who is going into the relationship? I am. Who is going to be the spouse or the partner? I will. So the process starts with us, and we are the core of everything. And I think the question for me anyway that we should really be asking is, why are we so ill-equipped to go into relationships that it becomes a subject to discuss what are the red flags? Why aren't we strong enough in our personalities and in our characters that once we see certain traits that don't resonate with our core selves, there's no discussion about it. We're heading out the door the other way, rather than thinking back regretfully for years gone by. You know, so I just think that, yes, there's that big thing about red flags. And if all you have to do is type in red flags into the internet, and any search engine will throw up thousands of different information about it. Yes, you know, the perspective I look at it from is red flags are there. We know the red flags. Depending on the culture, some of the red flags are a little bit blurred. I know that growing up, a red flag was you cannot marry a man from that state, which when you think about it now, it's like, what are you talking about? You know, but that's a red flag to our mothers and our grandmothers. You know, a red flag was, you know, you can't, you know, lots of things that now we look at it and we laugh about it. A yellow flag would be something like, yes, we don't know him, we don't know anything about him. He's probably of very questionable character, but he comes from a rich family. So your family are willing to consider him. Marriages were not necessarily just individuals. It was more families and communities and societies that way. And then a green flag, if we go to the other extreme, would just be he's a lawyer. You know, he might be a murderer, he might be an ex-convict, he might, Henry, I'm not talking about you. He might be any of those things, but because he's a lawyer, that's a green flag. You know, so I think it all begins with us when we're really dissecting this very, very carefully.
And, you know, Tante, I want you to, because you and I have had several conversations about this, and there was one time we were on the phone for 5 hours actually talking about the subject matter. And Dr. Monia hit the nail on the head when she said that we were not equipped.
Absolutely. I was so ready to like jump and say, wow, she really got it there, because that is really the core problem. Like, we are not equipped about red flags. Why? Because we start off as little girls with fairy tales, Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. Our prince is supposed to just come right out of the blues and sweep us off our feet, and everything ends happily ever after. So what we do is we fit everything that is happening around us into that narrative. Well, if he's too angry at me or treating me a certain way, oh, that must be part of the story, and it's all going to still fit into that happily ever after. And that is one of the things that when you read and study sociology, those are our formative years. But I'm happy that Disney has produced more content, stories, videos, fairy tales that are more realistic. When you look at Lion King, family, that there are issues, things about that point you to bad people, and sneakiness and things that can help us develop our awareness about red flags. Red flags could be called so many things. Indeed, I was a victim of that too. My father programmed me, I'm his first child, programmed me to say, hey, you have to marry from my ethnic group. You understand? And even when I got married to somebody that I knew was not going to give me my happily ever after, my focus was on that narrative, like pleasing my father in some way. Like, this guy is from the place my dad wanted me to get married to. And my father must have been an expert to insist that I marry from my place, so it could not go wrong, but it did go wrong. You understand? So fortunately, before he passed away, we had those conversations, and he did apologize and explain because of the war and the things that happened back in the day. They seem to encourage us sticking together. So he was more into the history and our traumas as a people based on the things that happened in the past. But really, that was not the right way to navigate your young daughter in terms of her marriage choice. I mean, every relationship that I have suffered pain and sorrow, the red flags were right in my face. Even for the fact that Oprah Winfrey had a show going for a long time where she did talk about these things. She brought a lot of people together talking about relationships and signs. And I remember one of those shows, she had a panel from some celebrities, and they talked about one of the things in a relationship. If a guy hits you once, he will hit you again. It's never gonna stop. You understand? And the first time my ex-husband gave me a back, we were having a conversation, and I had a different opinion, and it was like out of the blue. I shouldn't have married him because that happened before we got married. And now I'm personal about it. I'm very transparent about some of the things I've gone through. And that ended up being a really, really, really difficult situation for me, which I got out really early. That is why I consider myself still well-balanced and everything. But I know that it hasn't stopped. The other day, he was at Port Harcourt Airport, and two girls were literally fighting him because he was taking one girlfriend on a trip, and the other girlfriend found out about it while his wife is at home with 3 kids, So the red flags are always going to be there. If you don't pay attention to the red flags now, what you're going to do is put yourself through trauma that is going to take you a longer time to recover. You understand? And yes, we want happily ever after, like the fairy tales, but it doesn't always end up happily ever after, especially if you're not picking your partner, taking into consideration the things before you, the red flags. I have also been in a situation where music is going in the car, I was dating someone, and Mary J. Blige's song came up. You know that you remind me of a love that I want. And my boyfriend then went crazy that I'm telling him that reminds me of a love that I once knew, that I'm actually singing. That is a red flag. But in that moment in time, as a young girl, I said, oh my God, he loves me so much that even the songs I'm singing mean so much to him. But that was a crazy red flag, and it ended up being a crazy red flag relationship. So again, the tools we need. I wish we're learning so much content. Our curriculum is loaded with so much at the secondary school level that I wonder where are all these lessons that we need as young women and even young men, because young men also experience very narcissistic women too. You know, they experience women that are, you know, a lot of people were not raised on love. It's all over the internet. They were raised on survival. You have to know who was raised on love or survival. Some people, their traumas, some people have never sat one day in front of a therapist, a psychotherapist. They think it's something that is an Oyibo concept or, you know. Meanwhile, even if your life is going perfectly fine, you should be seeing a therapist. Most in the United States, most employee assistance programs, all of them give you 12 sessions a month free. You should at least be sitting in front of a therapist once a month at every stage of your life, talking about things, uncovering all these different things, the things going on in your mind, your traumas, things that have formed your core beliefs about yourself, understanding what is a boundary so that you end up living a healthy life. Because if you're raising children too, you're going to take your trauma and it's going to affect them, and the cycle continues. That's all I have to say.
Fantastic, Tonta. You've just you've been saying so many interesting things here. You've talked about the fact that, you know, when you talked about Disney, I was like, I loved Pretty Woman, to be honest with you, because I loved the way the guy, you know, swept her off her feet and all of that. So you're saying that we were programmed from the beginning to feel that, you know, the guys are supposed to come rescue us and all of that. And then I like what Dr. Ammonia and Tonta, you also said that our families, you know, kind of like we had the yellow, we were not even given the proper tools. So number one, like the red flag was that you can't marry from a particular tribe, you can't marry from da 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 da. And then yes, Dr. Ammonia was right to say as well that if so we have the yellow flag, like if it's a doctor, or the green flag where he has a good family, then we could marry him. And those are potentially very dangerous situations. And I think also because our parents, well, the society in the past didn't really have I don't think that there's listen, I don't even know what to say. Were they blind to what people were going through at the time, or were there no words to really describe what red flags were? Henry? Henry, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah, wow. Hi. I was really getting caught up with learning so much all at once. Okay. So, but okay. Taking from what you've asked now, our parents going back, and I think from what Tonte also said about her dad, trying to culture her based on the circumstances of the day, you know, their ethnic group trying to keep together, you know, protect themselves. Now, that was at that time. So it's not like the parents intended any harm. One, they were conditioned by the prevailing circumstances at the time. Yeah, there were a lot of ethnic juices running riot, and people were protecting it. They felt they had to keep their children within a particular fold, you know, so that they don't expose them to danger. But going forward, coming to present day, we have seen that the world is more of a global village, like they say. And cross-border marriages, cross-cultural marriages are ongoing. So my own view is that processing what we call red flags, or whatever color flags we want to talk about, would depend on your own likes, your own dislikes, what you set as a standard. I think Tonte mentioned something like about core values, okay? And then that would be the basis from where you would assess and know what you would call a red flag. But also take it a step further. If you're in a relationship with somebody, you need to also have an idea what that person likes, what that person dislikes, and what that person's core values are also. Because basically, the average relationship, the two individuals are from separate backgrounds. So there has to be a balance to it. We're talking about maybe like Disney programming us, and we are also programming ourselves and programming the people who are listening. But there has to be a balance. What are we programming people about? Faith also comes in. people who are Christians, then people who also have some other cultural influences. So a red flag, like Amine had pointed out, could vary, not just from culture to culture, from background to background.
Yeah, I even feel that contributed to most. Yeah.
Okay.
So Henry, I will. Henry, I'm going to just step in at this point.
Okay, please.
Red flags can vary, give or take, but there are some essential core red flags that are not negotiable. Whether you're an Eskimo or you come from Timbuktu, and it shouldn't. We should. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that.
I'm loving this. Please just do what you have to do. I'm loving this.
Absolutely. Because I wrote down when I was taking notes, something about landmarks. That's just what I put there. There are some things that are established, okay, that you'd stand on to now assess what you call red flags. Something as simple as communication. Something as simple as let's say basic practices could be hygiene, could be courtesy. Somebody that used to be friendly before and then suddenly the person is now backtracking a bit. That's a red flag. During courtship, for instance, there's the person was acting, always showing up affection, and then suddenly, the person is now withdrawing for some reason, you don't know. But the person has some kind of what you could call mood swings, and initially the person wasn't like that. Something may have happened. Somebody mentioned it earlier about saying, it's the person's character. Well, character can be edited or modified based on relationships.
But Henry, that could also be love bombing.
What's that?
This is interesting.
I'm being a troublemaker here.
Oh, please do have your way. I'm learning myself.
Love bombing.
That is love bombing, and a lot of people misinterpret that affection when it's actually a weapon. If I want something from you, I'll be so nice to you and tell you all the nice things and how much I love you and how much you mean to me and everything, where it might not necessarily be what I mean deep down inside. The question is, we've learned about love, at least my generation, from what we heard and what we learned growing up from Mills and Boon's novels and all of that kind of thing. We were not necessarily explained it. We were not, when we saw it in action, we weren't necessarily told that this is what you do when you love your spouse or you love your partner or you love your friend. We just saw it as respect, duty, reason. Love per se has only come into vogue, let me put it that way, as time has gone on because of, society and advertisements and all that kind of thing. What would you describe? What would you say love is?
You asking me?
Now, Henry, just hold on for a little bit. And before we delve into that conversation, I want to tell our viewers that, listen, this particular episode is about you as well. So in case you're just joining us, I have 4 people on the panel. I have Dr. Amoni Jasper, Mr. Henry Mbite, Tonte Ikiriko, and Ibi Omoboa, and we're talking about spotting the red flags early in a relationship. And Dr. Amoni spinned it to another dimension when she says that she says that, I mean, we should also be behavior aware as well, and to know why we don't make, why we tend to make the kind of mistakes that we make. So I'll just say that if you have any questions, if you have any contributions, please feel free to air your contributions and ask your questions. But quickly, let me just go. I have someone say here, enjoying the conversation so far. Someone says, interesting, informative, with very unique insights. And another one says interesting perspectives. Henry, I want to ask you this question because you said something to me yesterday that set me thinking. And where did I write it? I'll just look for it here. And it's all, just part of this conversation we're having. Sorry, 1 second now.
Okay.
Now, where is it? Okay, now I can't find it, but let me just say that, you said something yesterday. You said it's a different thing for somebody to identify or to detect the red flags, and it's another thing for them to act on them, or rather to act on them proactively. What did you mean by that?
Oh wow, man. Okay, yeah. Like now, here we are. You put this together, and so many people are contributing, and other people are hearing. I'm hearing. The panelists are hearing. People listening in are hearing. Now, dealing with it proactively, because in my opinion, red flags are indicators. Not all of them, because red could also turn to green at some point. So people need to deal with it proactively. It could be walk away. It could be sort it out. It could be learn something and have a reorientation. If we're better equipped, like most people have been saying here, having this information earlier on, part of our earlier curriculum in life, then when we see these things, we'll probably know how to address them. For instance, I see that, okay, the way this is going, this is probably a red flag. Now, I may have influenced that behavior. It's not necessarily all the time from the person's background. Maybe how I've been relating with the person could have triggered something. So I also need to look at myself while I'm looking at the other person. So now how I deal with that proactively, I could respond to it in a very negative fashion based on my so-called background. But now that I have better information, I know that I could react to it differently and say, okay, maybe if I talk more nicely to this person will respond in a different way. It's relating, it's relationship, it's communication. If I come out and say, these are my challenges, instead of bottling them up because I'm a guy and so much ego, I don't want to stop because I'm ashamed. Okay, then I don't deal with it proactively. Then it could also contribute to the fire, so to speak. So that's pretty much what I meant. You have the information, but you need to react proactively in a way that will resolve it or make you decide properly the next thing to do.
Perfect.
I think some of the things that we hide, I believe, are a function of what we were like. For me, I tell anybody any day, when I was growing up, I told my parents then, especially my mom, that I did not plan to marry. I wanted to reach the pinnacle of my career, and that was it. In my time, or should I say, yes, my mom believes that I got married late. I got married at 29, and then they were putting fear under my butt. And so when I got married, the person I got married to, we did not date. Like I met him sometime in October, and then by December, the family was already planning a wedding. And so, and then we had that notion where there are certain things you don't talk about. There were some taboos that you don't talk about. I had never heard my parents or anybody complain about the man hit me or whatever. And so when the hitting started, I just kept it, that kind of, I chested it because I felt it's one of those things. Nobody talks about it. So who's going to listen? And then everybody was hell-bent on me getting married. And by the time I had gotten into the marriage and we were like a month or two, I was already ready to leave. But who was I going to tell that? So it was a function of the pressure, because I got married at 29, and then everybody felt it was late. Why are you still doing my house? Why are you still doing my house? Come out, that kind of thing. And so, but when the opportunity came to get married, and they set me up with a family friend, and so everybody just assumed that because we know the family, just like what Tonte said and what Dr. Munya said, because we know the family, then it's all good. And so by the time I started seeing the red flags live, how was I going to get out? And my dad is that traditional person where even at the point where it had gotten so bad and I was attacked and my leg was broken and all the works, my father expected us to settle and I go back. So it's still a function of our families. My dad is that traditional person that doesn't, they tell you say that they forbid to come on husband's house till today. And so if this is happening after everything has already gone bad to the point where I had gotten injured, I was maimed and all that, and he still expects us to settle, then you can imagine in those early years, who was I going to tell? Just 2 months later that, look, I'm tired and I want to go. Nobody was going to listen to me. Then when you even come visiting, he says, I hope you know that you have to go back. And so it was something that you now had to code. You couldn't talk about it. It was those unspoken rules that you don't talk about. It's now that it's as if even I am an advocate. I speak about it any day. I speak about domestic violence any day because I've gotten to the point in my life where everybody has to know something is happening. Nobody's coding anything anymore. Because people are dying. You're dying in silence and you're just basing it on, what are people going to say? I don't even think about that anymore. If I had known what I know now, by the time I received the first black eye, I would have known that it was time to walk. But then anyway, I was coding it because I felt either my dad or my mom would say, you didn't even want to get married in the first place, so you're just looking for an opportunity to walk away.
Let me just take. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, but let me just take some questions, and I'll get back to you because what I see happening here, and it's the same thing that happened in the last conversation that we had with Mercy and with Coach Valerie, is that we have this parental upbringing, and this is not to say, listen, I'm not against the way we were brought up, and they had the good aspects of our upbringing, but I think that it's time for society and for parents to begin to reimagine our parenting and to think about to give us the leeway to honor ourselves and to respect, allow us as individuals to think about what's right for us in terms of our boundaries and our red flags. So I'm going to take this question here. Core values shift over time. How do we ensure we are choosing a spouse based on shifting values and people change over time, and the other partner may not be adjusting to the change? What happens then? So this question is shown open to anybody.
Well, I'd like to say something about that core values and changing of times. I spent some time watching this show on Netflix called Indian Matchmaker, and I was really thrown. Yeah, it was so interesting to me to see how different cultures operate when it comes to marriage. Now, in the Indian culture, the family goes to extreme length to find a partner for their children. So the kids could be going about their lives. They know at some point in time, the parents are going to get in touch with a matchmaker. Sometimes the Indians would meet for love. They call that a love match. So most times it's through a matchmaker who just goes through it has a database, compares backgrounds, even uses a lot of technology to bring partners together. Well, on the other hand, for those of us that come from Africa, back in the day, it used to be also parents saying, oh, I have a daughter, I have a son, or there were always this mutual matchmaking. And it was very customary for friends to say, oh, I have a friend, I would like you to meet, things. That doesn't work anymore. So what happens right now is that women have a biological time clock. There's pressure to get married from the time they leave university till they're 30 years old. And that is one of the reasons why they're not really paying attention to red flags. They just want to get that ring. They just want to start having babies. They do not want to be that lady that, did not have a child or never got married. So all those things that we're supposed to put in place when we're picking our life partner almost doesn't exist. But times have changed around the world. Other parts of the world, people are meeting their partners online. I still know a lot of Nigerian women that the thought of meeting someone online is scary to them. It's taboo. You know, there's not that switch. So what they're doing is waiting around, sitting in a corner to wait for that one dream man, Cinderella's prince, to just come and find them inside their house and marry them. Rather than put yourself out there, have your list of things that you want, and, or maybe not the list of what you want, but what you definitely don't want, and work with that. Right now in the United States, I've been listening to a lot of dating groups and coaches, and there's something called rotational dating. They believe because the times where a woman has to wait for her partner to come to her, it's non-existent. It's either you're going to end up 35 and start making that decision if I'm going to have a child outside wedlock and all that, or you can actively put yourself out there in the dating market and try different people until you find your match. Right now, we still have Nigerian movies that promote abuse, physical abuse, having a girlfriend, paramour outside your marriage. These are the core things that happen in our society, you know, and a lot of women believe that, well, if I cheated with a married man, so when I get married, I expect that somebody is going to be sleeping with my husband outside. And when you're in the midst of this, when all your monetary resources are going out, because men are doing all kinds of things. They're even buying houses for their girlfriends and their parents, buying land, like training other women on the schools, while they also have the wife and children at home. So the dynamics has to change in that you're looking for a partner that at least, like somebody said, there are non-negotiables in terms of especially physical abuse. Somebody is hitting you before you get married, you need to leave. Because what is happening is that a lot of people in relationships too, mature people that have been in marriages or out of marriages will tell you that, listen, whatever you accept before marriage or the early times of marriage, be ready to continue to do those things to the end. So as a society, we need to start to, we're never going to go back to where we're going to get family and friends introducing women to their partners. And for us to stop the desperation to just accept whatever is before you, we need to start exploring technology, meeting people, being able to identify what is it, who are you? What do you like? What is it that you want in a person? Who is going to match your personality? There are 16 personality types. You can go to the website, 16personalities.com. Know what is your personality type. Know what type of personality that is going to match with you. You understand? And with your list of boundaries, you should be able to also describe it in the most pleasant terms, what it is that you want and what it is that you don't want, and be able to be actively and creatively narrowing down your partner or companion choices, because it's no longer a man scanning the room. Who finds a wife finds a good thing. Yes, he's going to find you, but you should be out there also making sure that who is finding you is what you want to be found. I don't know if I put that right.
Tante, thank you very much. I have to stop you right there now, and I'll get back to you. But I want us to take this question. Is it possible to change red flags, or are they so intrinsic that change is unlikely?
Say that again.
I think,
is it possible to change red flags, or are they so intrinsic that change is unlikely?
if I may, I think red flags, nothing is impossible, but it's extremely difficult to change. You might spend your entire lifetime, give up your career, give up your dreams, give up your ambitions in your attempts to change a red flag that in a partner or whoever it is. So you have to maybe ask yourself that, is that a sacrifice that you're prepared to make? Yes, the other person, man, male, female, may decide that, like Henry said, I've done X, Y, Z, and I want to change, and I'm not going to do it. And that's fantastic. You can do that with somebody else. You don't have to do that with me. If and when you have changed yourself, because that is the mistake a lot of people make. They think they can change somebody else.
Mhm.
Have you tried feeding a child that doesn't want that food and it clamps its lips shut, and you're trying to give it food and it's not having that food? And that is a child, not to talk about a grown man. The only power you have is over yourself as an individual. So if somebody decides that they want to change and they make every effort, they seek the help, therapy, all of that to make change, and it's your friend or he or she is your friend, you want to help them, you don't need to be in it while you're helping that change. Yes, it's possible, but it's extremely difficult. So whoever is waiting for that change to happen, fantastic, all credits to them. But they need to also be looking at what is their motive for doing that, and are they being true to themselves? So again, it comes back to the individual. Society changes, the world changes, the weather changes, nothing is stagnant, nothing is static. We're in a dynamic equilibrium, everything changes. So red flags can change, but I might not be alive when the change has happened.
Okay. Now, Dr. Mania, I wanted to ask you this question as well. And I think that, well, and this is the question, it says here, now I want us to look inwards again, because you and I had a conversation some time ago, and the thing that popped into my head, something that you said that resonated with me, was the idea of honoring ourselves. And so I want us to look inwards to become self-aware of our own behavior. What is it about us that makes us to continue in the trajectory of hurt despite the telltale signs that we hear or see?
Conditioning. We're conditioned, we're programmed to act in a certain way. We grew up eating certain foods. We grew up learning certain characteristics. We're all a product of our environment. We can change. You can move to another environment and decide, oh, I quite like this. And then you start making little changes to integrate yourself into that new environment that you find yourself. But you will always carry a little bit of the blueprint from where you're coming from. That can be changed, but like I said, it will take the grace of God and a lot of work to make that change happen. And it's that conditioning. Our parents did the best that they knew. Nobody's parents did them harm because they hated them. All our parents brought us up from a place of love. And we accept that and we appreciate it. And now that we're adults, there's something they say in Yoruba, I can't speak Yoruba, but it's been translated to me, that you retrain yourself. Your parents train you and you retrain yourself. Your parents are not going into the relationship. When I got married, I'm still a new bride, by the way. When I got married, a very close family friend at our wedding said to me, Henry, I'm not sure why you're laughing, but a very close family friend said to me, just be like your mother and you will be fine. And it has stuck with me all this time. So I got married and I did everything like my mother would do, even what we ate. Growing up, it was constant that Henry would know. We would eat yam and corned beef on Saturday morning. And I brought it with me. Something as simple as that. I brought it with me. And I kept wondering why things were not working how I wanted it. It wasn't happening how Mills and Boons used to describe it, how he would carry you
Yeah,
on
sweep you off your feet.
and it wasn't happening like that. And to borrow a phrase from one of Ibinabo's friends, I gave myself some sense. I'm not married to my father. I'm married to my husband, so I cannot be my mother. One of the first things I asked my husband when I got married, I said, I'm not going to work. I went to university for 7 years, but I said, I'm not going to work. I want to stay at home. I want to make my house nice. I want to plant a beautiful garden. I want to have play dates with my children. And he looked at me, and his brother was there, and they looked at me like, and I did not understand because I was still trying to be my mother.
Mm.
I knew what I wanted to be. Like Ivier, I knew I still have dreams and aspirations of where I want to be. But because society had conditioned me in a way that this is what you're expected to be, I said, okay, let me do this. This is the good one to do. And I tell every young woman I meet, whether they want to hear it or not, I have lots of children, lots and lots of children. And I tell them, you can suppress yourself, you can repress yourself, but you cannot destroy your core. One day, it will rise. And what happens at that stage? It's either you have a good husband who is happy to see you flourish, who is happy to see you bloom, who will encourage you, or that marriage will end. So it still boils down to knowing yourself. I can only speak for me as a woman. I've never been a man, so I don't know what it's like on their side, but I'm doing everything I can now to learn how the men look at it, because I have a son. And I don't want anybody to put my son on a pedestal, because that's another red flag. Some men are go-getters. They want to go out, they want to work, they want to provide, they want to do everything. And it gives them pleasure to look after their family, their spouse and their children and the extended family and all of that. There are some women who want that as well. And that would be a perfect match. But where the problem is if I now put my husband, which is what this family friend with good intention and with the best wishes wanted me to do, to put my husband on that pedestal that I wasn't going to work, but I wanted to fly first class, and I wanted to go on holidays, and I wanted my children to go to private schools. And those were red flags for me, and they were not negotiable. And I wanted this man who's a year older than me, who is working hard, who is going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't care how he did it, I wanted it to happen, because that's the narrative that was taught to me. Until I advised myself, and I said, one trait that my husband has, which I would not trade for silver or gold, is his kindness. And when people are talking, and I say, no, when they say, put all your problems in a basket and then pick one. When you see all the problems in the basket, you say, you know what, I'll stick with my one. So I told myself, you know what, we'll work together, we'll do it together. So we need to change the primary narrative that society is telling us. And the hardest part is that they're telling us with good intention. They're not telling us out of malice. So how do you tell your auntie or your uncle? The truest person to me was my grandmother, may her soul rest in peace. She asked me, what is wrong with him? And I was like, Mama, I don't love him. And she nearly fell off her chair laughing. She said, my pikin, when on a train on our children finish, love go come, not be now. So we have to look at what our expectations are going in. And does it match who we're going into this contracts with? Are we imposing on them? What it's like somebody saying he wants his wife to be a model and then marries me. Hello, he will have a 5'2" model. I
Dr.
can't
Jasper, let me take this question from YouTube. It says here, at what stage would you recognize an issue as a red flag? Because some issues can be overcome.
Are you speaking to me?
Yeah, I'm asking the question. Let me ask Henry.
Okay. Well, thanks for all that. We didn't
Sorry
hear
for that.
No, I'm thinking like, well, a red flag, we're talking about identifying it early. So at the earliest stage, at the very earliest stage, once you notice it, the medical people will say something about early detection, where especially things like cancer, you know, they're more treatable, you know, and the person has excellent chances of recovery if things are nipped in the bud. So something that is red, a red flag, at the early stages, once you notice it. But you see, like somebody else had said, we notice these things and we're just like, oh, maybe it's better character, it's not a big deal, this is the first time, you know, just a mistake, you know. But if we see it for what it really is, like I am learning now, me personally, and I guess a bunch of other people who are listening and are learning too, you know, address it immediately. And like Dr. Monia has been saying, you know, some of it is non-negotiable. That is possible, but you might need to sacrifice a whole lot. Now, I'm the kind of person that believes that nothing is impossible, okay? It might take as long as Monia is suggesting. It might also take a shorter period. But there should be a safety net of love and trust. What do you desire? Does that person match up in other regards? Because aside from the red flag, you want to look at other things too. You see a big white sheet, a bed sheet, so to speak, big white bed sheet that is stained just one drop of blood. And you focus on the drop of blood as if that has messed up the entire sheet. But it's not always so, you know. The rest of the bed sheet is still white. So we need to balance how we focus on the red flags. We need to know, like Amonia is saying, the ones that are no, I'm out of it. Somebody carries a machete and chases you, and you're like, I'll deal with it later. No. If somebody tells a lie, you know, it could be just maybe under pressure at that time. It doesn't work for everybody. It could work for somebody like me. Okay. Now my level of tolerance is probably different from another person's level of tolerance. So everything also comes into play. Your personality, how, in quotes, how you're willing to work with the next person, you know. Sometimes it's just like, no. I knew it. This one was no good for me. This one was no good for me, and all that. And people just jump out of it. But direct answer to the question at the earliest possible stage, once you notice it, you start to deal with it.
Okay. Now that's very, again, very, very insightful. Now, you know, I want to ask this question because Tonja threw it open, or rather said something about it as well. And I want Ibi to answer that question. Ibi, is every
yes, please.
relationship redeemable? Are most challenging relationships redeemable? Can you hear me?
I hear you.
I said, are most challenging, you know, like what would be, I think Tonja who said it, that red flags are kind of like personal. So what would be like a red flag to me may not be like a red flag to you. Yeah. So in that, and of course there are the non-negotiable red flag signs. So most, or is every challenging relationship negotiable, or if you or redeemable? So if you find anything that you don't like, is it every time you have to walk away, or can we at least work things out and meet halfway?
I feel that there's a degree to what every individual can take, really. There's a degree to what every individual can take. Some people have a high threshold and some people have a very little one. I gave myself a very long rope. And at the end of the day, he didn't pay me. So I think that I borrowed myself some sense now, because at the stage I'm in now, if I'm going to go into a relationship, because I've stayed, I must be very frank with you, I backed off for a while. And so I borrowed myself some sense. If I want to go into a relationship now, I know what I want. I know what I want it to do for me. I'm not going to settle for all those things that I thought I could just manage. I'm no more managing them, because I know what happens when you decide to manage. So I've tasted that side, and now I want to see the other side. There were certain things that I allowed to happen. Like, I should have seen it as a red flag when a man decides, to cage you. I couldn't see my friends. I couldn't even see my family. My family members are doing a function, and I have to stay back. But when his family members are doing something, then we all go as a family. I should have picked it. But it was just like, it's one of those things now. When you marry into the man's family. So, but if I had the chance to do it all over again, oh no. I keep my friends and my family close to me, because at the end of the day, when I left, it is friends and family that brought me out of that depression. There was a time that I was suicidal. If I didn't have people around me, I would have gone a long time ago. So, they cage you, and you think that you don't have hope. But by the time, I have friends, I still have family. Like right now, I have friends, I have family. And so I don't feel caged anymore. There are certain things that I wanted to do. I gave up my job for the guy. I won't do that again if I had the opportunity. For what? But it was all that I'm trying to make it work. I'm trying to make it work. Maybe if I leave the bank and I'm now a stay-at-home mom, it will work. But it didn't work. In fact, it got worse, because I became a stay-at-home mom, and then I wanted to start a business. When I became a stay-at-home mom, it got better for a bit. And then I started a business, and my business started thriving, and the problems came back. And so I knew that it wasn't a question of I was going to the office. It's a man that doesn't want to see his wife grow, and flourish. He just wants a doormat. And so now I've picked that. And if I decide that I want to go into a relationship now, I already know that I'm not going to be that doormat. I'm an achiever. I want to work. I want to be able to do things for myself. I don't want, I want to buy sanitary towel, and then I have to ask. But I didn't grow up that way. But I tried to bend that way to see whether I could make it work. But it was a red flag. But I wanted to manage. And so there are some red flags that are not manageable at all. Some of them you can bend to.
Okay. Now, quickly, I just want us to, so now we've talked about...
child. I had a baby girl, and it became an issue, because he was an only son. Crazy, really.
Wow. Now, if you have any comments or any contributions, please just keep the comments and contributions coming. And now we've talked about extensively about the red flags and issues surrounding. We've talked about the effect of the red flags and what they do to us as individuals. Now, I want us to, and I know that it may sound a little bit mundane or just ordinary, but I want us to point out quickly the non-negotiable or the telltale signs of red flags. So, for example, love bombing, for example, is an example of that red flag. Selfishness is an example of red flag. What are the other examples that are non-negotiable that when you see them, you have to run for your life?
Violence. Violence is a no-no for me.
Violence, yeah?
It's a no-no.
Okay.
Violence can be physical. Violence can also be emotional.
Yes.
Any form of
emotional abuse.
Emotional is even worse, because I tell people it's not the physical scars that hurt the most. It's the one in your mind that hurts.
Yes. It reduces, you lose confidence in yourself.
Oh yes.
And to be honest, to make this whole process of red flags easy,
The science is out there. Narcissistic personality disorder. There's a whole community online. It checks off all the red flag boxes. If you just hit one very important one, isolation. I was somebody that thought that everybody except outside my immediate family was a peasant. It got to the point I would see my cousin on the road, my grandmother's first child, and I was scared to say hello, because if I said hello and say, who are those peasants? Who is that? It's my cousin. Well, all these peasants, you know, they want to isolate you from your friends and family. That is a big red flag, so that when the abuse is happening, you don't have anyone to turn to. You sit in there, you take it in, and absorb it. And it's not only physical abuse. Sometimes they don't even physically abuse you. That is why you think everything is fine. Because we think that once you're hit, that's the major red flag everybody knows about. But sometimes you don't have to be hit. They could tell you things like, if I don't marry you, nobody else will marry you. They could tell you different kind of program things into your mind. And you find out that when you look into their history, their mother maybe was even a single parent before they even had them. They hide so much of their own gunk. Red flags start with isolation. When they start to talk about what your friends are bad people, your cousins, your family, big red flag. Of course, the hitting is a non-negotiable. If you get hit one time, you better be out of there, because it's never going to stop. You understand? So if you're going to study narcissistic personality disorder, it'll tell you even about flying monkeys. Sometimes these abusive people with the red flags have friends that enable them. They have flying monkeys. You walk into a room, everybody's saying, our wife, our wife. That is how every other woman that is coming, our wife. Those things show that there's patterns. There's a game going around. You have to be alert to some of those things. So if you go to narcissistic personality disorder pages, websites, videos, will talk to you about love bombing. Don't forget, our love language sometimes is gifts. We like to be love bombed, but we need to be focused. That someone is writing you love letters, giving you nice gifts, whining and dining. Of course, we want that. It's part of the fairy tale narrative. And apart from that, it makes us feel good as women. We're feminine, you understand? But in the midst of all that, we need to be alert and not get carried away, because sometimes we're so carried away with the love bombing that when the other abusive things are happening, we are not really ready to confront it. This is my happily ever after. So we need to know the red flags. And by studying narcissistic personality disorder, the content is all over the internet. You will be aware of all the red flags available out there.
Yeah, and just to say that on Monday, I'm going to have an article by guest writer Dr. Gia, and she's done an article about how to spot red flags in a relationship. And she has things like gaslighting, she has things like inconsistency, hating their exes, being selfish, and of course, the narcissistic behavior is what it is. And, you know, I think that, you know, and Ibi said this perfectly well when she said that, you know, because I grew up in the village, listen, I'm very proud of my upbringing, because I have both the village and the city and, you know, all the works. And, you know, in those days when a girl would go marry a young man, they would say to her, which means that whatever he does to you, accept it like that. You know, there is no better place. All men are the same. So that is the programming and the conditioning. So at the time when women were experiencing abusive relationships or the narcissistic, behavior of the man flaring up, a lot of women didn't even have the words to describe what it was.
Mm-hmm.
But thank God today that we're having this conversation, and that so we can ably say this, that somebody who is a narcissist is most likely, you know, going to have, you know, an abusive tendency. Yeah.
Can I add to that, Ibinabo? I think it's a little bit short-sighted to have a long list, or to hand over a list to our children or our friends and relatives. I think, for me personally, my opinion is that I think we need to be honoring ourselves. And when we honor ourselves, If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. So
Very
it might
good.
not be something on that list. It might not be the slapping or the beating or the kicking or the stonewalling. It might not be anything like that. And then you feel a little bit churlish to say, when they say, because of course, being African heritage, it will go to the family meeting. And when they say, what happened? You don't have a name for it, but you know that it's not right. I'm not happy. He's doing something. I don't know what it is, but as
Doesn't sit well.
it doesn't sit well. And that should not be accepted just because it's not on this pre-list that we're given. Because after all, in our time, we were given a list, and the biggest thing on the list was if he beats you. If he abused you, no comments. If he withheld finances from you, no comments. If he didn't take you out, if he didn't wine and dine you, if he didn't romance you and all of that sort of thing, no comments. Nobody told you what to do in that instance. But maybe that's what makes you thrive as an individual. And it doesn't mean my feelings are any less important than Ivier's or Tonte's, or if he doesn't come home, say Ivier wants to go to work and she's driven and she's ambitious, and hey, to her, we need more of her. And he comes home and he's waiting for her to come back, for her to come and cook the dinner at 11 o'clock at night and all of that. If that happens, and what do you tell the wider society? That we're all from a society. We all want to be part of our society. We don't want to be isolated. But certain actions, because it doesn't sit well with us, if we take certain actions based on others' actions, it will isolate us. And it will be taken that we have isolated ourselves, rather than this man or this woman's actions have made me react in this way. So I think those fundamental ones, yes, but we also have to add the caveat at the end that the list is not exhaustive. I'm sure if I call my daughter in her 20s, she will come and give me 10 more, and I'll be like, oh, I didn't think of that. And if I call her other sister, they will add another 10 more. And it will be, oh, yes, it's true. But I told them what I know.
Yeah.
So honor yourself. If it doesn't sit well with you, by all means, talk about it. Don't have a bag packed at the door on standby. Talk about it, work through it. There might be yellow flags. But if it consistently is not sitting well with you, then you owe it to yourself to borrow yourself some sense.
Some sense. Now, I want to take, I have this question I wanted to ask you. Dr. Maria, thank you so much for that. And you're right in saying that, yes, that, that even the lists change generationally and, and it's very dynamic. So if something doesn't sit right with you, doesn't sit well with you, talk about it. And it's not all the time we have to pack a bag. Sometimes we have to, it could be yellow flags and, and all of that. So now there's a question I wanted to ask, and somebody just asked that question as well. And it's about being aware of our own behavior. So what about our own red flags, for example? How can I become aware of them? And thank you, Jane, for that question. You just took it right out of my book. So how are we? Yeah.
Yes, well, that is another good perspective and things we should also look at, because it's not always the other person. We also carry our own baggage from our own family issues, life experiences. And this is where being a good listener is very important. If you have a partner, you need to be listening to what they're saying. I come from a community, a very small community in Port Harcourt, Nigeria. And I noticed that back in the day, because everybody grew up together, we met at the same parties, we probably went to the same elementary schools, ended up in the same college. So when we see each other, we tend to want to give each other a big bear hug because we're happy to see each other. We know each other. But sometimes your partner might not really like the fact that you're in public, you go somewhere and here you are, one guy is coming and you're excited to see him, and here you guys have a big bear hug, boom. If your partner doesn't like that, I won't consider that really a red flag. It's just that in the men's world, there are certain things that they think about. There are ways they interpret things. You know, they feel like if your girl is sugging up on somebody, it means she's probably slept with the person. So you need to understand, you know, it's not that he doesn't want you to be friends with your friends, your old friends and your old pals, but, you know, in that world of men where they talk, walking into a place and a man walking up to your girlfriend or your wife, it is they don't accept that any man can just come and give you a hug. It means that even though he knows that you haven't really slept with that person and everything, but it's the perception among his buddies and the community, and that because we're not always immersed in the male world and how they perceive things. So listening, you know, and if you're fortunate to have a partner that's going to tell you, this is why I don't want you hugging somebody in public, because this is what it means among us men folk, that when you're hugging this guy, it means that he has access to you. He's probably slept with you, and you know, so that's understanding. So you meet your male friends in public, and nice, you can be excited, you know, tap each other, but that big, intimate, that hugging, you stay away from things like that, you know. And there's also, okay, I talked about the hugging, but there's something else too. I just remembered, staying in pictures, women too. You know, we want to meet a partner and everything. A lot of men do not like to see you in a picture with a man's arm around your shoulder in a picture. I had a friend, I had to really talk to her about it, because she's not married. Every time you see her in a picture on Facebook, she got one of these Potaka guys, their hands on her shoulder in a picture. And she loved doing that because it made her feel unpopular. I know a lot of people, but it didn't look good because men were not seeing, they were seeing her as like, she's out there. Every time you see her in a picture, a guy got his arm around her shoulder. So those are other personal red flags. Women, we too need to look within, manage some things that we're doing. And sometimes we might not know about this, except we listen to the guys, listen to your partners, you know. Sometimes when they're saying things, it's not always because they want to isolate you from people, but because of perception. And even if yes, perception. And if it doesn't even work with you in this relationship, at least you should be able to learn a couple of things to take over to your next one. So you manage yourself, you know, because the world
Wow, Tonta, that is so insightful.
Yeah.
I need to clap for you. And Henry, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm the person clapping for her because she just nailed everything. She knocked all the nails on their heads. And Tonta, thanks so much. True, so true. Spot on. I really don't have anything to add to that.
Perfect.
But I even know that I have some red flags myself. Really.
Okay.
I'm one to bottle things up for a bit, but when I release it, I hold nothing back. You know? And so my mom says I have a very sharp tongue when I want to have it. And so when I decide that I want to give you a piece of my mind, I give you a piece of my mind, no holds back. I just give it to you. I really don't care how you take it, but it's because I've been bottling it up for so long. And so my mom told me, stop bottling things up. Something affects you now, try and talk about it. But I'm not that much of a talker. Then I just bottle it up and I'm like, you're still going to do it again. And then the day I get the opportunity, I'm going to give it to you hot. And I know that, of course, that is going to have a that's going to have a backlash, obviously. You know, so I'm going to give it to you hot, as in I'm not even going to try and sugarcoat it at all. And I know that is, if I even do that to my children, I tell my children at times, I look at them and I tell them, if I give you a piece of my mind, you won't survive it. And my children will just back off because they know that I've been bottling it up for a very long time. So if I decide to unleash this thing, you're going to cry for a very long time. And I'm not even going to tell you sorry because I feel you deserve it.
Okay.
So I know that I do.
I would love to
do have my own.
Yeah, Ibi, you really hit the nail on the head. That is why we are not supposed to be bottling up things and talking about things as it happens, because truly some of us have the gift of the gab and also the gift of the insults. You understand? And sometimes there's coming certain things we say to people. You understand? One of the things my ex-husband tells people all the time, Tante is nice, right? If her mouth, she has a terrible mouth. And I learned to find out that some of the things I would say because I don't at you and do all those things, but I did have the brain to be able to say certain things I knew that would get you back. And we need to be very well aware that that is our red flags, and knowing that if we have the power in our tongue to really, really inflict hurt and injury on people, we need to be in charge of it. It's just like someone that has karate skills, martial arts skills. You can't get involved in any fight on the street and everything because you can kill somebody. It's the same thing, because we talk about how people traumatize us with the things they do to us and how they abuse us, but we can also be abused by the things we say to them that they can never come back from. So thanks for sharing that, Ibi.
That's fantastic. Now let me take some comments from the viewers. Dr. Jasper, great point. Beating and cheating seem to be our own generation's red flag, but there are more. And you sound stupid when you're unhappy for other reasons than these. And someone also says, how about when you want to discuss stuff as it happens, and then it's seen as nagging?
Yeah.
And then I'll check. Yeah. So how do we now do with the nagging thing? Because sometimes men say women nag a lot. Well, it's because sometimes they don't listen when you tell them something.
You have to say it like 100 times. You say it 100 times and they still ignore. You know, they still ignore. And so I learned to bottle it up. But when I give it to you, you must hear me now. You must hear me, because I will give you hot, so that you hear me, it sinks in. Because I remember when we were going through our divorce settlement, there was a comment that he made, and I knew that I made that comment out of anger, because I had bottled stuff up for a very long time. When he keeps saying, you have only daughters, you have only daughters, you have only daughters. And then he told me, are you sure these children are mine? And I was so angry that day. And I looked at him and I said, you know what? Now only mama of Pekin know who get Pekin. And I knew I said it out of anger. And so by the time we were setting things, and he was like, did she not tell me that she's not sure whether is my own? And he held on to that. And I said, but you know me now. You have been drowning it down my throat. And I decided to give you what you wanted to hear. So I know that I have a very sharp tongue. And when I give you that sharp tongue, I can't take it back, unfortunately. I can't take it back.
Now, let me see. Thank you very much for that contribution. I think that most of the thing that men say also about us is our sharp tongue as well. But that's not an excuse now. That's not an excuse to hit a woman. Someone says here, Tante's comment about isolation being one of the narcissistic strategies and point. Of course, Dr. Jasper, the list can't be exhausted. And now our time is fast spent. And I don't think we've even exhausted this subject matter as we ought to. But one thing that I've learned is that in looking at the red flags, we should also be aware of our own behavior as well. And do we have any final words?
I would like to say that just like Dr. Amonia said, she was very spot on. We must honor ourselves. And when we're in touch with honoring ourselves, anything that doesn't feel right doesn't have to be on a list. We should be in tune with it, process it, discuss it. And if it's not going away, there's no point. Move on to the next. There are options out there. Don't sit down in any kind of poo-poo relationship. Get on the internet, join dating coaches, know how to conduct yourself. Be on a rotational dating, meet people, and you'll find your dream partner. It is possible. Yes, the fairy tale can still happen, but you must shine your eye. Don't sit down and let anybody ruin your spirit, your life, because you're going to turn this into a generational thing, pass it down to your children, and next it's going to go on and on. Stop the cycle. That's all I have to say.
Henry, thank you, Tante. Henry.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. My last words will be something like, in line with what Amonia said about honoring yourself also. But I want to link it up to the spiritual. I want to say that's like praying, looking inward, listening to your spirit. When you pray about it, you have a better direction. The Holy Spirit will tell you what to do, how to handle it, or what to say or what not to say. So definitely, because regardless of the ages, things are changing, like we've said, but the guidance for all ages will always come from the Holy Spirit. So each thing you can tackle, and you get proper guidance from that.
Ibi, thank you so much, Henry. Ibi?
What I would say is, don't let anybody make you feel less than you are. In fact, Sister Ivy said something to me just last week. Don't give yourself a name that is not yours. And that stuck. Because I've given myself lived with that title, the title that people use to shame a lot of us that are divorced or are separated. Everybody, you want to tell somebody something and then you tell them, I'm a single parent of, and she corrected me and said, don't give yourself that title. And it has stuck, because right now I'm not allowing anybody belittle me anymore. I'm not allowing anybody make me feel small, because whether you like it or you like it, I'm best at being me. Nobody can be me more than me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ibi. You're a mother of 3 beautiful daughters, and you're a human resources strategist, a specialist. Yeah, that's who you are. Yes. And Dr. Amonia?
Thank you, Binabo. As usual, a very interesting conversation. Thank you, Ibi. Thank you, Tonte. Thank you, Henry. For me, I always say, honor yourself. You cannot honor yourself enough. Look at yourself how you would imagine God looks at you. And that is all you should be aiming for. Not even one rung of the ladder less than that. Let your light shine. Never, ever. Ghanaians say, happy yourself. It's not anybody's responsibility. It's my responsibility. It's your responsibility. It's not up to anyone else. If you're miserable, you can't say Ibinabo did X, Y, Z. You have a choice. You're not a tree. If it's not working, move. None of us are perfect. Very far from perfect. And our spouses are also very far from perfect. And we should try and just temper our imperfections. We know that as women, our mouths are very sharp, and we know that it's extremely hurtful. And we were saying just here that emotional abuse sometimes is worse than physical abuse. So why the double standard? What we don't want to do, why are we dishing it out? And because he's made us go through so much that we've been through, we're not a tree, move. We need to honor ourselves. And that's what I would end with. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is a very, very, again, insightful and informative, episode. Now, somebody says here, great stuff. Generally, balancing act life this. Generally, a balancing act this life of ours. What doesn't work for you might work for others. And next week, I have a special guest, and the next week's program is going to be the concluding part of this love and relationship series for now. And my special guest will be Mr. Theo Akatuba. He is one of Nigeria's most foremost relationship experts, and he's going to give us tips and tools on how to make good relationship choices, spotting the white flags in our relationship early and lots more. So the idea then would give us the tools that we need to honor ourselves in our relationships so that we can have better outcomes. And so thank you everyone for being part of Ibi Speaks today. I'm highly appreciative for all my first-time viewers. Thank you very much. For my faithful viewers, thank you. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel and you're watching, please subscribe. It's Ibinabo NAB. And yeah, I have a website called onewomanity.com. I have articles from guest writers, and they are very interesting and informative reads. And girls, guy, I'm going to call you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody. Thank you. Thank
Nice
you.
one. Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank
Take care.
you. Yeah.